Imagine this: a mother dog chained tightly to a rusted post, unable to move, her 6 tiny puppies huddled in a pit of mud, shivering in the cold. Their tiny cries echo through the desolate farm, unheard and unanswered, until one person chose to act. What happened next will leave you inspired. If you believe in kindness and second chances, this is a story you won't want to miss. Evelyn Walker sat quietly by the fireplace in her cozy living room, the gentle crackling of the flames providing the only sound in the stillness of the night. At 67 years old, Evelyn found solace in these quiet moments, surrounded by the warmth of her farmhouse and the faint hum of the countryside outside. Her days were filled with tending to her animals and maintaining her small property just outside Silver Creek. It was a simple life, but one she cherished. The sharp ring of the telephone pierced the tranquility, startling her from her thoughts. Evelyn set down her knitting and reached for the receiver, a flicker of concern crossing her face. Calls at this late hour rarely brought good news. "Hello?" she said, her voice calm but cautious. "Evelyn, it's Karen," came the hurried reply. Karen Myers, the manager of the local animal shelter, was not one to panic, but her tone carried an unmistakable urgency. "I'm so sorry to call you this late, but I need your help." Evelyn straightened in her chair. "Karen, what's wrong?" "We've had a report about a dog," Karen began, her words spilling out quickly. "A German shepherd, chained up at an abandoned farm outside of town. She just gave birth in a mud pit, Evelyn. It's bad. The conditions are horrific and the owner, well, he's nowhere to be found." Evelyn's chest tightened as Karen's words painted a grim picture. Over the years, she had seen the worst of humanity when it came to animals, but something about this struck her deeply. A mother dog, alone and chained, struggling to protect her newborn puppies in the cold and filth. It was unthinkable. "Where is she?" Evelyn asked, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Karen hesitated for a moment. "It's near the old Miller farm, about 3 hours from here. I know it's a lot to ask, but I don't have anyone else I can send tonight. The longer we wait, the worse it'll get." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "I'll go," she said firmly. "Send me the address. I'll leave right away." Relief flooded Karen's voice. "Thank you, Evelyn. I'll stay by the phone in case you need anything. Be careful out there." "I will," Evelyn replied, before hanging up the phone. She wasted no time, quickly pulling on her warm coat and boots. Grabbing a flashlight, a pair of bolt cutters, and a thick blanket, she stuffed them into a sturdy bag. Before stepping out the door, she cast a glance at the wooden cross hanging by her entryway. Closing her eyes briefly, she whispered, "Give me the strength to help them." The cold night air greeted her as she stepped outside and climbed into her old pickup truck. It had seen better days, but it was reliable, a faithful companion for her many trips to the animal shelter. The engine roared to life, and with a determined heart, Evelyn pulled onto the dark, winding road. The countryside stretched before her, the quiet stillness of the night broken only by the hum of the truck's engine. Evelyn's mind raced with thoughts of the helpless mother dog and her puppies. She pictured the fragile newborns, their tiny bodies shivering in the cold, and the mother, worn and weary, doing everything in her power to keep them safe. Evelyn tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her resolve unshaken. She knew the road ahead would be long, but she also knew she couldn't ignore the call. With the address etched in her mind and the weight of responsibility in her heart, Evelyn, without a moment's hesitation, drove through the night to save them. The first rays of dawn stretched across the sky as Evelyn's truck rumbled down the uneven dirt road leading to the abandoned farm. The air was crisp, and a pale mist clung to the fields surrounding the decaying structure ahead. As the farm came into view, Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. The once thriving property was now a shadow of its former self, overgrown with weeds and riddled with broken-down equipment. She parked the truck and stepped out, her boots crunching on the gravel. Grabbing her flashlight and bolt cutters, She made her way toward the back of the farmhouse, where Karen had said the dog would be. The morning air was heavy with silence, save for the occasional creak of an old windmill in the distance. Rounding the corner of the dilapidated building, Evelyn froze. There, in the middle of a muddy enclosure, lay the German shepherd Karen had described. The dog's body was shockingly thin, her ribs visible beneath her matted fur. She was chained to a rusted post, the heavy iron collar digging into her neck. Her eyes, hollow and weary, stared blankly ahead, but she shifted slightly as Evelyn approached, instinctively positioning herself between her 6 tiny puppies and the stranger. The puppies, barely a few weeks old, huddled together in the mud, their fragile bodies trembling from the cold. Their soft cries pierced the stillness, a desperate plea for warmth and safety. Evelyn's heart sank as she took in the heartbreaking scene. "Oh, sweet girl," Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. "You've been through so much." The mother dog flinched at Evelyn's words, her body tense with fear. Evelyn knelt down slowly, keeping her movements deliberate and non-threatening. "It's okay," she murmured softly. "I'm here to help you. No one will hurt you anymore." Reaching into her bag, Evelyn pulled out the bolt cutters. Her hands shook slightly, but she steadied herself, determined to free the dog from her cruel confinement. She approached cautiously, her eyes locked on the dog's. The animal growled low, a weak yet protective warning. Evelyn stopped, speaking gently. "I know you're scared, but I promise I'm here to make things better." The dog's growl subsided into a soft whimper as Evelyn moved closer. She reached the rusted chain and carefully positioned the bolt cutters. With a strong, deliberate squeeze, the chain snapped, clattering to the ground. The dog flinched but didn't move, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "There you go, girl," Evelyn said softly. "You're free now." The mother dog stared at Evelyn for a moment, as if processing the sudden change. Then she lowered her head to nudge one of her puppies, reassuring them with a quiet whine. Evelyn's eyes welled with tears as she watched the tender gesture. "You're such a good mama," she said, her voice thick with emotion. With the chain removed, Evelyn turned her attention to the puppies. She spread out the thick blanket she had brought and gently picked up each tiny pup, wrapping them securely. The puppies squirmed weakly, their soft cries quieting as they felt the warmth of the blanket. The mother dog watched Evelyn's every move, her eyes filled with a mix of worry and trust. When all 6 puppies were safely bundled, Evelyn reached out a hand to the mother. "It's your turn now," she said gently. The dog hesitated, her body trembling from exhaustion and fear. But as Evelyn knelt closer, extending her hand palm up, the dog sniffed cautiously before taking a tentative step forward. "That's it," Evelyn encouraged. "You're safe now." With patience and soft words, Evelyn coaxed the dog to follow her to the truck. The mother moved slowly, her weakened body struggling with each step, but she never took her eyes off her puppies. Evelyn opened the passenger door and helped the dog climb in, settling her onto a soft blanket she had laid on the seat. The mother dog collapsed onto the blanket, her head resting on her paws as she let out a deep sigh. Evelyn smiled gently. "We're going home now," she said, stroking the dog's matted fur. "No more chains, no more suffering." The drive back to Evelyn's farmhouse was quiet. The puppies, nestled securely in their crate, had fallen asleep, their tiny bodies rising and falling with each breath. The mother dog lay still in the passenger seat, her eyes half closed, but occasionally glancing back toward her puppies. Evelyn glanced at her new passengers, her heart swelling with a mix of sadness and hope. The scene she had just witnessed would stay with her forever, but so would the knowledge that she had made a difference. As the farmhouse came into view, bathed in the soft morning light, Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose. She pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine, taking a moment to collect herself. "This is your new beginning," she said quietly, looking at the dog beside her. "Let's get you and your babies settled." Evelyn stepped out and gently carried the crate of puppies into her warm, inviting home. The mother dog followed hesitantly, her eyes darting around as if unsure this was real. Evelyn led her to a soft bed she had prepared near the fireplace, where the dog immediately lay down, her body visibly relaxing for the first time. As Evelyn carefully placed the puppies beside their mother, she saw the dog's eyes soften with gratitude. The tiny puppies wriggled toward her, nuzzling into her side as she instinctively curled around them. Evelyn watched the scene with tears in her eyes. "You're safe now," she whispered. "All of you." With that, the long night ended, and the journey toward healing began. The farmhouse was quiet as the morning sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow across the wooden floors. Evelyn Walker knelt by the fireplace, carefully tending to the tiny puppies she had rescued the night before. Wrapped in soft blankets, their fragile bodies had begun to show the first signs of warmth and comfort. Nearby, their mother lay on a makeshift bed that Evelyn had prepared. The German shepherd, still thin and weary, watched her puppies with tired but protective eyes. She flinched slightly whenever Evelyn moved too quickly, a clear sign of the fear and mistrust she carried from her time in the muddy pit. Evelyn crouched down, her voice soft and reassuring. "You're safe now, sweet girl," she said gently, placing a bowl of water and a plate of chicken and rice near the dog. "I know it's going to take time, but we'll get through this together." The dog hesitated, her ears flicking nervously before cautiously sniffing the plate. Hunger soon overtook her caution, and she began to eat with small, careful bites. Evelyn watched with relief, knowing this was a small but important step toward recovery. By the second day, the puppies were regaining their energy, squirming and letting out tiny barks as they explored the blankets. Evelyn decided it was time to give them names, a small way to celebrate their survival and individuality. She sat cross-legged on the floor, the 6 puppies tumbling around her feet. The mother dog watched from her bed, her eyes calmer than they had been the day before. "All right, little ones," Evelyn said with a smile. "Let's give you names, shall we?" She picked up the first puppy, a feisty little male with a patch of tan fur on his chest. "You're full of energy, aren't you? Let's call you Max." Setting Max down, she reached for a tiny female pup with soft, floppy ears. The puppy nuzzled into Evelyn's hand, her demeanor gentle and sweet. "You're Daisy," Evelyn said, stroking her soft fur. The next was a curious male, already trying to climb out of the blanket pile. "You're Milo," Evelyn laughed, "always looking for adventure." A shy little female peeked out from behind her siblings, her dark eyes watching Evelyn intently. "Bella," Evelyn said softly. "That's a perfect name for you." The 5th puppy had a golden patch on her paw that gleamed in the sunlight. She was playful but also calm, often settling herself in the middle of the group. "Sunny," Evelyn said with a smile. "Your little glow brightens everything." Finally, Evelyn picked up the smallest of the litter, a female with a determined spirit. Despite her size, she had been the first to wiggle toward her mother the night before. "Ruby," Evelyn said, cradling the pup. "Small but mighty, just like a gem." The names seemed to fit perfectly, and as Evelyn called them one by one, the puppies responded with tiny yips and playful wiggles. The mother dog, though still wary, began to show signs of trust. Evelyn noticed that the dog no longer flinched as much when she approached. Instead, she would watch quietly, her body slightly more relaxed. On the 3rd day, Evelyn decided to give the mother dog a name. Sitting beside her, Evelyn spoke softly. "You've been through so much, and yet you've protected your babies through it all. That takes courage. I think I'll call you Hope." The dog tilted her head slightly, as if acknowledging the name. Evelyn smiled and stroked her fur gently. "Hope suits you, because even in the darkest moments, you never gave up." Day by day, Hope began to heal. Her appetite returned, and her fur started to regain its natural sheen, as Evelyn bathed her and brushed out the tangles. She stayed close to her puppies, nursing them and keeping them warm, her instincts as a mother shining through despite her exhaustion. Evelyn marveled at the bond between Hope and her puppies. Even when Hope was weak and frightened, she had always placed her pup's safety above her own. Evelyn couldn't help but feel inspired by the dog's unwavering love. As the puppies grew stronger, the once quiet farmhouse transformed into a lively playground. Max and Milo were the ringleaders, tumbling over each other in endless games of tag. Daisy and Bella often played more gently, while Sunny and Ruby explored every nook and cranny of the room. One morning, Evelyn sat on the floor with a cup of coffee, laughing as the puppies chased a stuffed toy she had tied to a string. Their tiny paws pattered across the floor, their playful growls filling the air. Even Hope seemed lighter. She had started wagging her tail, a small but powerful sign of her growing confidence. She would watch her puppies play with a soft expression in her eyes, occasionally stepping in to nudge one back into line if they got too rambunctious. "She's a natural," Evelyn thought to herself, watching Hope gently nuzzle Ruby, who had toppled over during a game. The farmhouse, once filled with silence, was now alive with the sounds of hope and joy. Evelyn felt her own heart healing as she cared for the little family. Hope's journey to recovery was far from over, but Evelyn knew they were on the right path. The love and resilience Hope showed her puppies reminded Evelyn of the strength it took to overcome life's hardships. As the sun set over the farmhouse, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Evelyn sat on the porch, watching the puppies play in the yard under Hope's watchful eye. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the chance to help this little family, and for the reminder that, even in the darkest times, love could bring light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight there was peace. Evelyn smiled as she called out to Hope and her pups. "Come on, everyone, time to rest. We've got a lot more living to do." The little family followed her inside, ready to face the next chapter of their journey together. Weeks passed, and the farmhouse grew louder with the joyful chaos of 6 energetic puppies. Evelyn's days were filled with laughter as the pups chased each other around the yard, explored the cozy corners of the house, and tumbled over one another in endless play. Their tiny whimpers had turned into playful barks, and their once frail bodies now brimmed with vitality. Hope watched over her puppies with a careful eye, often stepping in to gently nudge one back in line if their antics grew too rowdy. Her health had improved significantly under Evelyn's care. Her coat now glistened with a healthy sheen, and the wariness in her eyes had softened into trust. Evelyn often caught herself smiling at the sight of Hope, curled protectively around her puppies or wagging her tail when Evelyn entered the room. But Evelyn knew the time was approaching when the puppies would need to leave the nest. They deserved loving homes where they could thrive and bring joy to families of their own. Evelyn began her search for the perfect families with care and diligence. She contacted Karen at the shelter, posted ads in the local newspaper, and spread the word through the community. She was overwhelmed by the number of inquiries, but knew she needed to be thorough. One by one, prospective adopters visited the farmhouse to meet the puppies. Evelyn scrutinized each family with loving but firm questions. Did they have the time and patience to raise a puppy? Was their home safe and suitable? Would they treat the dog as a cherished family member? The first to leave was Sunny, the little golden-pawed explorer. She was adopted by a young couple with a spacious yard and a love for hiking. Sunny's boundless energy would be a perfect match for their active lifestyle. Next was Milo, the curious adventurer. He went to a family with 2 children who were eager to play and care for their new, furry friend. Evelyn smiled as Milo tumbled out of the door with the children, already bonding with his new family. Daisy, the sweet and gentle pup, found a home with an elderly woman who had recently lost her own beloved dog. Evelyn knew Daisy's calm demeanor would bring comfort and companionship to the woman's quiet days. Bella, the shy observer, was adopted by a local artist who wanted a quiet companion in her studio. Bella's reserved nature seemed to melt under the gentle touch of her new owner. Max, the bold and boisterous one, was the last male to leave. He joined a family with 3 teenagers who couldn't wait to teach him tricks and take him on long walks. His wagging tail as he bounded into their car was a clear sign he'd found his match. Finally, Ruby, the smallest and most determined, was adopted by a single mother and her young daughter. Evelyn felt her heart warm as Ruby snuggled into the girl's lap, her tiny tail wagging furiously. Though Evelyn felt a pang of sadness each time one of the puppies left, she knew she had given them the best possible start in life. Watching each one drive away with their new families filled her with both pride and relief. Through it all, Hope stayed by Evelyn's side, her loyalty unwavering. Evelyn had considered finding a new home for Hope as well, but deep down she knew the answer. "This is your home now," Evelyn said one evening, stroking Hope's fur as they sat together on the porch. "You've been through too much to start over somewhere else. And besides, I'd miss you too much." Hope nuzzled Evelyn's hand in response, her tail wagging softly. She had found her place, not just as Evelyn's companion, but as a symbol of resilience and love in the farmhouse. As life at the farmhouse began to settle, Evelyn found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought Hope and her puppies into her care. Each puppy now had a new life, and Hope had found a place where she could finally feel safe. But one thought lingered in Evelyn's mind, a shadow that refused to fade. The man who had chained Hope to that rusty post, leaving her to fend for herself and her newborns. Evelyn stared out into the twilight, her hand resting on Hope's head. "He hasn't faced justice yet," she murmured to herself. "Not yet." Though she didn't know when or how, Evelyn was certain the story wasn't over. The person responsible for such cruelty couldn't simply disappear into the shadows, and when the time came, Evelyn would make sure he was held accountable. Was this the end of Hope's journey, or was it only the beginning of something greater? Evelyn glanced down at Hope, whose eyes met hers with quiet understanding. The story wasn't finished yet. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Evelyn's farmhouse as she tended to the garden. Hope lay nearby, basking in the warmth, her watchful eyes following Evelyn's every move. Life had settled into a peaceful rhythm since the puppies had gone to their new homes, but Evelyn's thoughts often returned to the night she rescued Hope and her litter. Her phone rang from the porch, breaking the tranquil silence. Wiping her hands on her apron, Evelyn hurried inside to answer it. "Hello?" she said, picking up the receiver. "Evelyn, it's Karen," came the familiar voice of the shelter manager. The urgency in her tone immediately put Evelyn on edge. "What's happened?" Evelyn asked, gripping the phone tightly. "We've had another call," Karen said. It's about another dog. A Labrador retriever this time. Evelyn, he's chained up at the same place where you found Hope." Evelyn's heart sank. The memories of that desolate farm flashed in her mind. Hope's gaunt frame, the trembling puppies huddled in the mud. The thought that another dog was suffering in that same place filled her with both anger and determination. "Is he in bad shape?" Evelyn asked, though she already knew the answer. "The person who called said he looks emaciated," Karen replied, "barely moving, just like Hope was. Evelyn, I wouldn't ask if it weren't urgent." "You don't have to ask," Evelyn said firmly. "Send me the details. I'll head there now." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Evelyn's truck rumbled down the familiar dirt road leading to the abandoned farm. The sight of the dilapidated building sent a chill through her, but she steeled herself and parked near the same rusty fence she'd approached weeks ago. The farm was eerily quiet, the once overgrown weeds now taller, swaying in the breeze. Evelyn grabbed her flashlight and bolt cutters and made her way around the building to the spot where Hope had been found. Her flashlight beam cut through the growing darkness, and there he was, a yellow Labrador retriever, chained to the same rusted post. Evelyn's breath caught as she took in his condition. The dog was alarmingly thin, his ribs pressing against his dull, matted coat. His head hung low, and his eyes, barely open, reflected exhaustion and despair. He didn't even lift his head as Evelyn approached, a stark contrast to the defensive growls Hope had managed in her own desperate state. "Oh, sweetheart," Evelyn whispered, crouching down a few feet away. "What have they done to you?" She could see that the chain was shorter than the one that had held Hope, restricting the dog's movement even further. A rusty bowl, long empty, lay on the ground nearby. Evelyn reached into her bag for the bolt cutters, her movements deliberate and slow to avoid startling the dog. "It's okay," she murmured. "You're not alone anymore." The dog barely reacted, too weak to resist or acknowledge her presence. Evelyn's heart ached as she cut through the chain with a sharp snap. The dog flinched slightly but didn't move. Evelyn reached out, her hand hovering over his head. "You're free now," she said softly. "Let's get you out of here." With great care, she slipped a leash around his neck and gently coaxed him to stand. His legs wobbled under his thin frame, and Evelyn quickly supported him. She wrapped him in a blanket, cradling him as she carried him to the truck. "You're safe now," she whispered, placing him on the passenger seat. "Let's get you home." Back at the farmhouse, Evelyn prepared a quiet corner in the living room for her new guest. Hope watched from her bed, her head tilted in curiosity as Evelyn carried the Labrador inside. Evelyn gently laid the dog on a soft blanket and placed a bowl of fresh water and a small dish of boiled chicken and rice nearby. The dog sniffed the food hesitantly before taking a few small bites. Evelyn smiled, relief washing over her. "You're going to need a name," she said softly, stroking his head. She thought for a moment, then said, "How about Lucky? Because finding you means we still have the chance to make things right." Lucky's eyes, though tired, seemed to flicker with a hint of gratitude. The next day, Lucky began to show small signs of improvement. He managed to lift his head when Evelyn entered the room, and though his movements were still slow and cautious, he accepted her touch with quiet trust. Hope, sensing the new arrival's fragility, approached him with gentle curiosity. She sniffed him carefully, her demeanor calm and welcoming. Lucky didn't flinch. Instead, he watched her with a mix of apprehension and acceptance. Over the following days, Hope seemed to take on the role of a guide, showing Lucky the rhythms of life at the farmhouse. Evelyn often found the two dogs lying near each other, a quiet companionship forming between them. As Lucky's health improved, Evelyn's thoughts kept returning to the abandoned farm. Two dogs, both left to suffer in the same place. It was no coincidence. Sitting on the porch one evening, Hope resting by her side and Lucky dozing nearby, Evelyn stared into the twilight. "The person who did this is still out there," she murmured to herself, "and they can't keep getting away with it." Her resolve hardened. The dogs were safe now, but justice had yet to be served. Whoever was responsible for this cruelty needed to answer for their actions. Was the nightmare at that farm truly over, or would Evelyn have to face the darkness again? The story wasn't finished, not yet. Evelyn Walker sat at her kitchen table, a stack of notes and printed articles spread before her. The cozy warmth of the farmhouse stood in stark contrast to the heavy thoughts on her mind. Hope and Lucky lay nearby, their calm presence a reminder of why she was doing this. Both dogs were safe now, but Evelyn couldn't shake the lingering shadow of the man who had caused them such suffering. Her hands rested on a tattered receipt she had found during her last trip to the abandoned farm. It bore the name Earl Turner, a name that had appeared before in the murmurs of Silver Creek's small community. Evelyn had heard the stories. Earl was once a dog breeder, running a farm that produced puppies for profit. But when the market shifted, his business collapsed, leaving him deep in debt. Evelyn stared at the name. He didn't just abandon his business, she muttered to herself. He abandoned these innocent creatures. Determined to uncover the truth, Evelyn reached out to Karen at the shelter and other contacts in the area. Bit by bit, she pieced together the grim details. Earl Turner had been reported multiple times for neglect before shutting down his operation, but no action had ever been taken. "He just left them there," Karen told Evelyn during one phone call, anger and frustration evident in her voice. "He locked the gates, walked away, and never looked back." Evelyn's heart ached at the thought of how many other animals might have suffered under Earl's care. She knew she couldn't let this go unanswered. Evelyn began documenting everything she had found: photographs of the farm, records of Hope and Lucky's condition upon rescue, and statements from neighbors who had seen the neglect firsthand. She compiled the evidence into a detailed report and brought it to the local animal control authorities. The process was slow and filled with bureaucratic hurdles, but Evelyn's determination never wavered. She attended hearings, presented her findings, and even spoke to reporters to shine a light on Earl's actions. Her efforts paid off. Earl Turner was summoned to court, where the evidence against him was overwhelming. Under pressure from public scrutiny and legal consequences, Earl was fined heavily and sentenced to community service at the local animal shelter. Most significantly, he was banned from owning or breeding animals for life. The day of the sentencing, Evelyn stood outside the courthouse, her hands gripping a photo of Hope and Lucky, as they had been when she first found them. It wasn't enough to undo the harm Earl had caused, but it was a step towards justice. As Earl left the courthouse, he avoided Evelyn's gaze. She didn't speak to him, knowing that no words would change what he had done. Instead, she looked down at the photo in her hands and whispered, "This is for them." Back at the farmhouse, life had taken on a peaceful rhythm. Lucky had blossomed under Evelyn's care, his once frail body now strong and healthy. He had become inseparable from Hope, often following her around the yard or curling up beside her on the porch. Evelyn watched them one afternoon as they lounged in the sun, their tails wagging lazily as they napped. For all they had endured, both dogs now exuded a quiet happiness that filled Evelyn's heart. They're more than just survivors, Evelyn thought to herself. They're family. Hope and Lucky's bond deepened with each passing day. Hope, who had once been wary and guarded, now trusted completely. Lucky, whose spirit had been nearly broken, had found strength in Hope's gentle guidance and Evelyn's unwavering care. Together they were a testament to the power of love and second chances. One evening, Evelyn sat on the porch with a cup of tea in hand, Hope resting at her feet and Lucky sprawled nearby. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of gold and orange, casting a warm glow over the farmhouse. As Evelyn stroked Hope's fur, she spoke softly. "You've come so far, both of you, and I'm so proud of what we've built here." Hope wagged her tail, her eyes meeting Evelyn's with an expression of contentment. Lucky let out a soft sigh, rolling onto his side with a look of pure relaxation. Though justice had been served, Evelyn knew there was still work to be done. Earl Turner's actions were part of a larger issue, one that required continued vigilance and advocacy. Evelyn resolved to dedicate even more of her time to helping other animals in need, inspired by the journey she had shared with Hope and Lucky. But for now, in the quiet of her farmhouse, Evelyn allowed herself to savor the peace she had fought so hard to give them. Justice had been delivered, and a family had been formed. Yet, as Evelyn gazed out at the horizon, she couldn't help but wonder if this was truly the end of their story, or if more challenges and triumphs lay ahead. For Hope and Lucky, and for Evelyn herself, the journey of love and redemption was far from over. The sun dipped low over Silver Creek, casting its golden rays across the sprawling fields of Evelyn Walker's farmhouse. The once quiet home had transformed into a sanctuary, not just for animals, but for the community it had inspired. Evelyn, now 70, sat on the porch in her favorite rocking chair, a warm cup of tea cradled in her hands. At her feet, Hope and Lucky lay curled together, their gentle snores harmonizing with the rustling of the evening breeze. The farm had become more than just a home. It was a beacon of hope and compassion. Evelyn had spent the last few years organizing events for the community, adoption drives, educational workshops, and gatherings that celebrated the bond between humans and animals. Children came to learn about kindness, families came to adopt, and volunteers found purpose in helping those who could not speak for themselves. Through her efforts, the town of Silver Creek grew to see Evelyn's farm as a symbol of what love and dedication could achieve. People who once turned a blind eye to the plight of animals now reached out to help. Evelyn's story, and that of Hope and Lucky, had touched hearts far beyond the borders of their small town. Hope and Lucky had become inseparable, their days filled with play, companionship, and quiet moments by Evelyn's side. Hope, once chained and forgotten, now roamed freely, her eyes sparkling with life. Lucky, who had been a shadow of himself when Evelyn found him, had grown strong and confident under her care. Evelyn often marveled at how far they had come. They were more than just animals she had rescued. They were her family. On this peaceful evening, as the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Evelyn felt a deep sense of contentment. She reached down to stroke Hope's fur, her touch gentle and full of love. "You've both given me more than I ever could have imagined," she said softly. "You've reminded me of the beauty in second chances." Hope wagged her tail, and Lucky let out a happy sigh, as if to agree. Evelyn's journey with Hope and Lucky was more than just a tale of rescue. It was a testament to the transformative power of love, compassion, and perseverance. She reflected on the lessons they had taught her, that even in the darkest moments, there is always a glimmer of hope. That kindness has the power to heal not only those we help, but also ourselves. And that love, when shared, grows stronger and inspires others to do the same. Evelyn knew that life wasn't always easy. There would always be cruelty and challenges, but she also knew that the answer lay in action, in choosing to care, to protect, and to make a difference, one life at a time. As the first stars appeared in the sky, Evelyn closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. "Dear Lord, thank you for guiding me on this journey. Thank you for showing me that even the smallest acts of kindness can bring light into the darkest places. Bless all those who open their hearts to your creatures and inspire them to continue spreading love and compassion. Watch over those still in need and help us to be your hands in this world. Amen." Evelyn opened her eyes, gazing out at the serene countryside. She thought of all the people who had been touched by Hope and Lucky's story, people who had found inspiration to act, to care, and to believe in the good that could be done. To those listening now, Evelyn's words carried a heartfelt plea. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who needs a little hope. Consider opening your home to an animal in need or supporting a local shelter. Your actions, no matter how small, can create ripples of kindness that reach further than you'll ever know. And remember, it's never too late to make a difference. As the last light faded from the sky, Evelyn leaned back in her rocking chair, a soft smile on her face. Hope and Lucky stirred at her feet, their peaceful presence filling her with gratitude. The farm was quiet, but its story was alive in the hearts of all who had been a part of it. Evelyn closed her eyes, breathing in the cool evening air. She knew that her work wasn't done, but for now she allowed herself to rest, knowing that she had made the world a little brighter, one life at a time. The story of Hope and Lucky had begun in darkness, but it had grown into a tale of love, redemption, and faith, proof that even in the face of cruelty, kindness could prevail. And as Evelyn sat surrounded by the love she had given and received, one thing was clear. The greatest reward in life is found in giving back, in being the light for those who need it most.